This is CBN NewsWatch.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm George Thomas. Today, the country takes a giant step forward in the campaign against the coronavirus. Our chief medical correspondent, Lori Johnson, explores how soon we can expect relief from the pandemic. The president's latest attempt to overturn the Electoral College puts the focus on Texas. We will explain the legal argument gaining support among the president's peers. Preparing to take on new terrain, how the U.S. Space Force is expanding. And more news of peace in the Middle East, why Trump's overseas wins are good for the United States. Those stories and much more today on NewsWatch. But we begin in the United States, where we are just one step away from launching an epic vaccination campaign against the outbreak that has killed close to 300,000 Americans. A government advisory panel has endorsed the widespread use of Pfizer's coronavirus vaccine. Caitlin Book has the developing story for us.
One of the most critical moments in the fight against COVID-19 happened late Thursday afternoon over a Zoom call.
We do have a favorable vote.
That vote endorsing widespread use of Pfizer's coronavirus vaccine and putting the U.S. only one step away from an epic vaccination campaign against the virus that's killed more than 300,000 Americans.
We really want to treat this vaccine as the liquid gold that it is, because it's really the only tool that we have right now in our toolbox to cure this disease.
Next, it goes to the full FDA for authorization. And then within 24 hours, Pfizer will send out the first 2.9 million doses.
We can act quickly, and we intend to. We understand the urgency of the situation. We want to make sure we make the absolute best decision for the American people.
The Pfizer vaccine was found to be 95% effective, with no serious side effects. The first doses will go to healthcare workers and nursing home residents.
Personally, I cannot roll up my sleeve fast enough to get this vaccination.
A pivotal moment happening as the U.S. reaches another grim milestone. Over 3,000 deaths in a single day. That's a reported fatality from the virus every 30 seconds.
People still don't think this is a big deal. They think it's kind of fake news. It's not. It's real. The numbers are absolutely real.
But many Americans still have questions about the vaccines, with only about half saying in a new Associated Press poll that they're ready to take the shot. Pfizer says it can have 25 million doses of the vaccine for the U.S. by the end of December, and it likely won't be the only option for long. Officials are hopeful we'll have FDA authorization for vaccines from Moderna, AstraZeneca, and Johnson & Johnson as well, as health experts hope these medications will finally defeat the outbreak. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Thank you, Caitlin. CBN's medical reporter Lori Johnson joins us live now for the latest on the virus. So, Lori, this time next week, millions of our most vulnerable will likely have gotten their shot. Does this mean that they are now protected from the virus?
Well, yes and no. Partially protected, not fully protected. Remember that there are two shots that people are going to get. Excuse me. Okay. It's early. So the first one likely next week for millions of Americans, and then another one 3 weeks later, and then a week after that, they will be fully immune. So we're talking a whole month between that first shot and when they're fully immune. But scientists tell us right away the immune system starts to make those antibodies. And so each person will be protected to some degree after they get that first shot. There is some concern, George, among healthcare professionals that people will get the first shot and won't go back for the second shot for various reasons. It's inconvenient. Maybe it was painful the first time around and they don't want to go through it again, because we do know that there are, for about 15% of the people, there is significant pain at the injection site and some symptoms like a fever, headache, body aches that can be uncomfortable. And so there is that warning that people do really need both of those shots.
Lori, how does the CDC determine who gets the vaccine?
Well, it's a very interesting process. They want to first give the vaccine to the people who are most vulnerable. Obviously, that includes nursing home residents. We've been reporting about the disproportionate number of nursing home deaths since the very beginning of the pandemic. Only about 3 million people live in nursing homes. We have a population of 330 million actually, but 40%, George, 40% of the COVID-19 deaths have occurred in nursing homes. So obviously they get it, but also healthcare workers, because it's very important that we keep our healthcare workers on the job, because if they're out with COVID, who's going to take care of the other sick people? So those are the people who are going to be getting it first. After that, other people over the age of 80 who aren't in assisted living or nursing homes, and other people who have comorbidities. And here's a very interesting thing, too. Scientists tell us that people who are African American, Hispanics, have also disproportionately high numbers of cases and also deaths. So there's going to be an effort to take the vaccine into neighborhoods and distribute it that way, too. So the people who are most vulnerable are going to get it. So people who don't have comorbidities, who are younger, presumably people like us. Not that we're really young, absolutely. We're kind of young. We're at the back of the line. We're not going to be offered it probably until late spring, early summer.
Okay, so a lot of focus, Lori, obviously has been on the Pfizer's vaccine, but there's another one right on its heels. Tell us about that.
That's right. We're probably going to be having this very similar conversation next week. Moderna's vaccine is going to be up for emergency use authorization in just 1 week. It's very similar to Pfizer's, except it doesn't have to be kept as cold. Pfizer's has to be kept at minus 90 degrees Fahrenheit, so they have to have special freezers for it. Moderna's only has to be kept at minus 2 degrees, and it can be kept in a refrigerator for a month. So it's going to be a lot easier to distribute at pharmacies and doctors' offices. After that, we're talking about AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson. AstraZeneca is also 2 shots like Moderna, but Johnson & Johnson is just 1 shot. And then there are 2 more behind that, Novavax and Sanofi. So it looks like in 2021, we're going to see 6 vaccines approved most likely.
Okay, fantastic. And you will be here covering all 6 of them.
God willing.
Yeah. Lori, as always, thank you so much.
Sure.
Have a good weekend. Okay?
You too.
President Trump's effort to overturn the November election results could come down to a lawsuit filed by the Lone Star State. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is asking the Supreme Court to invalidate Electoral College votes in the battleground states that Trump lost. The legal argument is gaining ground among some of his Republican peers. CBN White House correspondent Ben Kennedy explains.
The lawsuit alleges individual actors in Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin changed election procedures, something only state legislators are allowed to do.
What Texas is arguing in this case is that the changes that were made in election rules in those 4 states, particularly with regard to absentee ballots, were made by government officials, not by the state legislature.
It means that if the court were to rule in favor of Texas, those 4 states, the states named in the complaint, would in fact have their state legislatures determine the outcome. They would pick the electors.
First, justices have to vote to hear the case. The suit asks the Supreme Court to delay certification of the Electoral College vote, plus determine a massive amount of votes are illegal, and then tell states to retally and resubmit their votes.
In a state-on-state suit, our only place to go is the U.S. Supreme Court. We can't be heard anywhere else. Other lawsuits start at a district court level, and they have a right to be heard at least once.
On Tuesday, the High Court rejected a bid by Republicans in Pennsylvania to avoid the results of the state's election. The same could happen to this case.
They make some pretty good arguments in the lawsuit that they have filed, but I'm not sure that the U.S. Supreme Court will want to take up a case that could potentially change the outcome of elections in 4 states.
That was our Ben Kennedy reporting from the White House. By the way, we now wait to see if the Supreme Court will hear the case. In the meantime, the Electoral College is set to cast their ballots on Monday, which would seal Mr. Biden's win. Mr. Biden's historically challenging transition to power is becoming even more complicated. A federal investigation into the finances of Biden's son, Hunter, is underway. This will likely complicate Senate confirmation hearings for Biden's next attorney general. That AG could have oversight over the investigation into the new president's son. Hunter Biden was the subject of accusations by President Donald Trump and his allies. This latest probe is scrutinizing some of Hunter Biden's Chinese business dealings and other transactions. Meanwhile, Joe Biden is expected to announce more cabinet picks later today. Joe Biden has nominated the first immigrant to head the Department of Homeland Security under a Biden administration. The U.S. immigration policy would likely take a dramatic turn based on the previous administration. Watch for an open door to refugees, a new conversation on reform, and an end to border wall construction. Heather Sells explains why.
After 4 years of closed doors to immigrants and refugees, a Biden administration would open them. The question being how fast and how wide.
Within 100 days, I'm going to send to the United States Congress a pathway to citizenship for over 11 million undocumented people.
Right now, some GOP senators indicate it's an area of potential compromise, pushing for a middle ground destination. That would mean no mass amnesty and no mass deportation. It could mean, however, a financial penalty.
Some sort of way that immigrants who are undocumented, who are unlawfully in the country, could come forward, they could pay a fine as a penalty for having violated the law as restitution, and then they could earn permanent legal status if they, of course, meet other appropriate requirements.
It might not be a priority, though, given that COVID and the economy already top the political agenda. What Biden could easily accomplish via his pen, new protections for immigrants whose parents brought them here.
And all of those so-called dreamers, those DACA kids, they're going to be immediately certified again to be able to stay in this country.
He is also promising admission to refugees, largely shut out during the Trump administration. Faith-based resettlement agencies are already gearing up.
I think we will see a significant increase, and I hope that that can build because this affects a lot of really vulnerable people.
President Trump's target for next year's refugee admissions was 15,000. Biden wants 125,000. That number might be unreachable, however, given that U.S. agencies have had to close or suspend some 100 programs.
We actually had to mothball a couple of our offices that were doing refugee resettlements. We are prepared to open those offices up.
And national security experts warn it could be risky.
I think it is rather dangerous to say we would just increase the refugee admissions to 125,000 in a year and go up from there.
The system can't absorb that kind of swing so quickly. So it needs to be scaled appropriately, and we need to make sure that we don't flood the system like we did in 2015, 2016.
Biden has also pledged to stop border wall construction, although Border Patrol agents say it makes their jobs easier.
Where we've put that in place, we were able to increase our effectiveness from about 10% to over 95%. And more importantly, we were able to pull 150 agents out of that area and then redeploy them to other parts of the border.
These new policies could encourage a surge at the border. It's a possibility that law enforcement is already preparing for. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Thank you, Heather. Coming up, more news of peace coming from the Middle East. Just ahead, our Middle East Bureau Chief, my man, Chris Mitchell, explains what it took for the Trump administration to make all of this happen. That story in a moment. Stay with us, folks.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back to the broadcast. A fourth Arab-Israel peace agreement is coming out of the Trump administration. Israel and Morocco have agreed to normalize relations. President Trump said the two countries would restore diplomatic and other relations, including the immediate reopening of liaison offices in Morocco's capital, Rabat, and in Tel Aviv. Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell joins me now live from Jerusalem to explain the impact of all of this. So, Chris, what does Morocco get out of this agreement?
Well, George, Morocco gets something they've waited for a long time. They're getting U.S. recognition of what's called the Western Sahara, and there's been a dispute there for decades with the Polisario front there. Sorry, they want to have their own autonomous region. Morocco obviously doesn't want that, so that's been under dispute. The UN doesn't recognize this area as Moroccan territory, and they want an international agreement on this. But the U.S. recognition of this area really is a big boost to Morocco right now.
When the president made the announcement, he took, according to Vice President Trump, a contrarian approach. What does that mean?
Well, my take on that, George, is that President Trump has been contrarian for about 4 years right now. And he's been doing things that people say that he couldn't do or that he shouldn't do. And I think the number one example would be the move of the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. A lot of people warned that was going to set off either World War III or perhaps a regional war. Really nothing of the sort ever happened. So I think the Abraham Accords actually is looking at the Middle East from a whole different paradigm than anyone had before. I'll give you one example as well about the Palestinians. And by the way, this Morocco agreement is one more setback for the Palestinians. You know, former U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said there could be no peace with any of these Arab nations unless the Israeli-Palestinian conflict was solved. And that is not solved yet, and yet we see all these nations starting to normalize relations with Israel.
Yeah, that statement by Kerry, a lot has happened in our world since then. Chris, tell us, how is all of these peace agreements going to benefit the United States?
Well, I think actually if you have a more stable, Middle East, I think that's good for America. It's certainly good for Israel. And I think perhaps that would be a lessening of the U.S. military presence necessary in the Middle East. That's not a given for sure, but it's a possibility that they could be less involved here in the region.
Okay, finally, you are the handsome host of the show Jerusalem Dateline. Quickly, tell us what's coming up on this week's broadcast.
Well, we're going to have a story about Saudi Arabia. That relationship with Israel hit a bit of a bump last week. We have talks about what's happening at Bethlehem during Christmas and what COVID impact has had on Christian businesses. And we have another segment that we've had last week. It's a new one called Reading the Bible in the Land of the Bible. All
right, terrific. As always, you can see more news from the Middle East and my friend Chris and his awesome team tonight on the CBN News Channel at 9:30 Eastern. Still to come, folks. Devastating communities hit by typhoons in the Philippines. Just ahead, how the group Operation Blessing has stepped up and the part that they are playing and how you can help as well. That story in a moment.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, A new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
Administering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to CBNNewsChannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back. You're watching the CBN News Channel. Two major typhoons struck the Philippines last month. Goni and Vamco swept through 1 week apart, leaving thousands homeless and without food and water. CBN's Operation Blessing made the rugged journey to bring relief to some of the victims who live in a remote area. Lucille Talusan reports.
Rosalinda Lucero told CBN News, "Our abaca crops and the coconuts are all gone. Where will we get food? Every time I see a helicopter, I wave and shout for help, but they don't see me." Rosalinda is among the thousands who lost their homes when Typhoon Goni hit their town in the Bicol region. She is worried because she has nothing left to feed her grandchildren, but they have not received any assistance because their village is hard to reach. With the military's help and coordination with the local government, an Operation Blessing team traveled to Rosalinda's village, crossing rivers to bring the remote village much-needed food, hygiene kits, and prayer.
We want to let them know that they are not forgotten, they are not left behind. Operation Blessing had the heart to come here to let them know that we love them, Jesus loves them.
Rosalinda says she is grateful because finally her cries for help have been heard. However, after only a few days of good weather, another strong typhoon hit the Bicol region and other parts of the country. Barely recovering from the devastation brought about by Typhoon Goni, the people here are bearing the brunt of another strong typhoon, Vamco. Thank God Operation Blessing has sent a team in advance, prepared to give immediate assistance to the victims of this.
If you have means to donate to Operation Blessing's Disaster Relief Fund, you can help with their efforts by calling the number on your screen or visiting CBN.com. Folks, we'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Welcome back to the broadcast. 7 U.S. Air Force basic trainees marched into history. They will become the first enlisted members of the U.S. Space Force. The trainees graduated at the Joint Base San Antonio-Lackland yesterday. They will transfer to an air base in California to begin training for their new Space Force positions. That training will include learning how to operate satellites and radar stations. The Space Force is the first new military service since the U.S. Air Force was established in 1947. Larger-than-life menorahs have been set up for Hanukkah, the annual 8th-day celebration of lights in the Jewish faith. This year, the celebrations, as you can imagine, will be very different, especially for one San Francisco community. There will be no community gathering to light the menorah each night. 2 rabbis are asking people to stay home.
The city actually told us that they put a lot of restrictions and guidelines on us, and we're respecting that, and we're asking everybody to stay home safely from their own home.
Today will mark the second night of Hanukkah. Well, folks, that's it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. Also, tell us what you think about the stories you've been seeing by emailing newswatch@cbn.com, or you can reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Exciting times here. So enjoy the rest of your day and have a great weekend. Goodbye.